If your home studio isn't set up correctly, the IRS can and will deny the deduction. Today, we are breaking down what actually qualifies, the rules creators always miss, and the red flags that trigger audits.
Your creative genius deserves the same precision behind the numbers.
Welcome to Let's Get Fiscal,
hosted by Anastasia, Maisha, and Danielle.
Part of the women-led team at Coterie Tax.
From smart tax moves to cash flow strategy,
we decode everything it takes to run a thriving creative business
so you can scale with confidence and sleep easy at night.
Press play and let's grow your business.
And we're back. So this week we are going to talk about that home office deduction that everybody talks about. So I get a lot of requests. I mean, everybody's not really sure. Does it count? Does it not count? Maybe I should play it safe and not do anything, or just don't even know that it exists.
How to handle it.
Right.
Yeah. So why... a lot of their hesitation, I believe, is based off of things getting flagged or like the fear of it being flagged. So why are the home studio deductions like flagged so often? Like what's going on there?
Well, a lot of it for the home office deduction, it should be your principal place of business.
Okay.
So that's going to catch a few people.
Okay.
So if you have an office and you work in the office during the day, but then at home you go and you have like this nice comfy, setup as well. When you decide you want to work late nights, that's not going to count.
Okay. So it has to be where you were going to be working majority of the time. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's not really another place where you're going to be doing your work.
Okay.
And it's becoming more and more popular now, and we have to worry about like home occupation licenses and all of them.
Yeah. I remember those
Fun
stuff.
Yeah. So that's going to be one of the biggest things is making sure that it is, really where your primary place where you are going to be completing your work. And then also it has to be exclusively used for your business.
Okay.
So that's also where people get a little bit tripped up because, if you have like a small studio and your living room is your bedroom, which is also your kitchen, which is also your workspace, then what do I do? Because it's all just one big area. Or I work from my dining room table every night, what does that count? And how does that play into the question? So that's really what I get a lot. So sometimes with the home office deduction, it's more about coaching what I'm looking for, what things we need to keep in mind, because there's also people think like, okay, maybe it's my rent, and that's all I need to take into account. And it's actually quite a bit more that we can identify.
Okay. That's interesting. So if you like make changes to your bedroom and you have one little section that's like, this is where I'm going to be working, can you count that? Like, how does that work?
There is a little bit, within the tax community. So some people are looking for like, no, it has to be like the complete room. But really the exclusivity test is going to be, is this one area in particular always used for business? And so let's say you have a desk in your dining room. Well, you can't take the whole entire dining room because you are also eating all of your family meals there. But if you have that corner where your desk is, and that's always where you're working, and that's only for your work, then you can take that square footage of that space. And then also we want to keep in mind that there's storage. So storage space doesn't necessarily have to use like that exclusivity test. So, if you have a guest bedroom and you're using the closet to store all of your items, yes, the bedroom itself is used for a completely different purpose, but this closet, which is not really used by your guests, so it's a free closet, you're using that as storage, that we don't necessarily have to use that exclusivity test for.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is kind of going to be a little bit more niche about like creators in general and stuff, but people who have like their living room as their backdrop, like they are doing things within it. How do you count it then? Like, does it just get really murky? Like, what do you do? Yeah.
I mean, really, I would I would lean towards no,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, whether or not you're doing that content creation, you're going to have a living room
Yeah.
where you sit in. So, so, however, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not creating like a stage or
Mhm.
a certain section
Mhm.
where it everything is staged in a very specific way in a very specific section. So you are creating the atmosphere of a living room
Mhm.
in this area, but it's only specifically for this one thing, and you're known for that as well
Ah, okay,
too.
okay.
So if you have a very particular backdrop, everybody knows like this is your backdrop. All of your videos, they all have this same kind of thing. Then, that kind of leans towards something that I would take as acceptable because yeah, it's all like just very specifically, tailored. So for example, I was talking to somebody, if they have this big, beautiful backyard and they wanted to put up like a pergola. They have like a seating area. They have their microphone and they're going to do like daily meditations out there. Like they
Mhm.
are creating this stage that is only going to be used for this content creation. So, if they were to do anything else in their backyard, they have like another patio set for when they're, hanging out with their friends and everything because you can't really hang out with your friends in one chair, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair,
So
that's fair.
that's where we can kind of really easily see the differences because this person would be known by like, oh, they have this beautiful garden. They have all the flowers around them. Like it's really
Mhm.
serene and all of this stuff. So, like that's also
Yeah.
where we want to take into account is like, is this part of your branding and who you actually are that is kind of different than what you would be in your real life because you're creating a persona. So that's where I say, like a living room, you really have to get down into the nitty gritty on some of these items that from the outside could seem like they are personal
Gotcha.
use. But
Okay.
I mean, I've seen people, they rent a whole entire second house.
Oh, okay.
But that's the thing
Yeah.
because they're paying 2 rent bills. So they
Mhm.
have one house that is where they are living, and then they have this other house that's just staged.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's some
Okay.
of the things too.
So
Mhm.
I'm going to circle back to the rent thing in a moment. But once you do go through this, like, the different types of tests to make sure that this is actually like a home office and it may not necessarily be the entire room, but you do have a section of it. Is this when you get like your ruler out and you got to figure out like square footage? Like, how do you then
Mhm.
go from there if it's not
Mhm.
at least just like one room? You know what I mean?
Yep, yep. So it is by square footage.
Oh, it
So,
is. Okay.
mhm,
Yeah, that
mhm,
was a joke,
mhm.
but no.
No, get out that
That's real.
ruler. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. So you do need to know kind of like what the square footage is compared to the overall, I guess, to the of the house or the
Mhm,
place. Okay.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm, mhm.
That is good to know.
Yep.
Okay. So now back to the rent. If you don't have the situation where you're owning a house and then renting a second place to do like
Mhm,
stage stuff, but you're just renting a place, can you still get the like home
mhm,
office
mhm,
deduction?
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Even if you don't own it? Okay.
Yep, yep. So even if you don't own it, you can use your portion of rent. So when we talk about the different expenses that you are able to use, it is a little bit different when you rent versus you own.
Mm-hmm.
When you're owning the property, you're not going to take a deduction for your full mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So you're going to take into account the interest that you're paying on the mortgage, your insurance, and your property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to separate out a little bit of that for what you're paying towards the principal of the
Mm-hmm.
house. And then when you're renting, you can take a deduction for that full dollar amount of the rent because there's no like asset that you get at the end of the term. And then we're also taking into account, like I said, the insurance,
Mm-hmm.
property taxes, even renter's insurance.
Yeah.
We're looking at your water, your gas, your electric, your
Okay. The
trash,
utilities and
your
everything.
internet.
Mm.
Yep, all of your utilities. Also, repairs can play into that as well.
Okay.
So, we want to get a full picture on everything that it took to keep this property running.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
it's not just going to be the rent, it's going to be everything else that's included in it as well. And then once we get the full picture of all of the costs associated with running, your home, then we'll take a portion of that based on that square footage versus the total square footage of the property.
Okay.
Um, so there is a little bit of an easier method too, if you're not quite
Oh, if you don't, so
sure.
you don't have to pull out the
Yeah,
ruler,
yeah.
or
Well, you still need a bit of the
okay,
ruler,
okay,
but
okay.
they have the simplified method. So they'll give
Mm.
you $5 a square foot up to 300 square feet. So that way
Oh,
you don't
okay.
have to, if you're not
Mhm.
really good at record keeping and you're not sure, then you can go this simplified method route. But
Mhm.
sometimes you end up a little, especially in housing costs these days, you end up a little bit better if you are taking the time to actually track your actual expenses
Mhm.
and taking those into account. And like I said, it's going to be, you want to also take into account any of the storage spaces that you're using for your products. Even like I have some people that have a bunch of gear and they have a storage unit, but once they purchase their own house, they decide to get rid of the storage unit and then they put all of their gear in the garage and then they put a security system on the garage to make sure nobody's getting into the garage. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, here's all of these renovations and things that you're doing that if you didn't have this gear, you would not
Have
be
needed
doing at
do
all.
this. Okay.
So, or if you were like, I would get a security system anyways because,
Mhm.
I want to say hello to all the Amazon guys that come through. I don't know, whatever. Um, so a lot of times those are the questions that I'm asking
Mhm.
is, what is your lifestyle like? What is important to you? Because then that kind of tells me what are you spending that you would already be spending to
Mhm.
run the house versus items that you're purchasing specifically because you're doing this one thing.
Gotcha.
So,
Nope, that
mhm,
makes sense.
mhm,
So tax season is coming, just like
mhm.
just like the
It's
winter.
always coming. Yeah, I
So, is there
know.
anything creators should be doing right now? I guess if they're working at their dining room table, they'll at least need to accept the fact that that won't work as a home office space.
Exactly,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. Or is like I said, like even in the studio,
Mhm.
they're like, well, it's a studio, so every place is where I work, and
Mhm.
so I'm gonna take the whole entire,
Mhm.
location. It's
Mhm.
no,
Yeah.
not really. We do need to separate out a portion of where you're living versus,
Mhm.
where the business is, and that's going to be kind of the biggest red flag. Like if you're saying that you have a 1,200 square foot house and the business is using 1,100 square feet of that house,
There's some
then like
questions there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
have a very tiny kitchen. There's some people
Mhm.
that live in 100 square foot,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
yeah, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to be able to show that.
No,
But
that makes
I
sense.
think the biggest thing that people miss is especially taking into account the amount of storage space. So it's not only just like where you keep your laptop and where you're going through any of your paperwork if you check your mailbox anytime, but it's also where you have items stored that can be taken into account, and that's inventory or any
Mm.
of your
Mhm.
gear and things like that.
Okay.
So, yeah,
All
I know.
right.
So I think a lot of it is going to be taking in being aware of how many square feet your house actually is, because that
Yes.
can be a question
Mhm.
sometimes too,
Mhm.
especially if you're living in an apartment. Sometimes,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
gets a little bit tricky on.
I usually just look up the website of either the apartment building or for our house, Zillow. Like,
Mhm.
what did Zillow say we have?
Right.
Yeah. And it was like, that's what we have.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So if you could please do
Yeah.
that. And
Mhm.
then, like you said, you got to get out your ruler. You have to, and I mean, there's even really funny stories because auditors will come in and do a walkthrough.
Shut the front door. For real?
Yes, yes, yes.
They will come in and measure?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely. So they will come and they will check out all of the spaces that you are claiming are used for business. And it used to be that they would go in and they would check the carpet to see if there was any indents for a bed that was in the room that they had recently moved.
Stop.
And then they said, like, now all the auditors are finding that it's all hardwood floor.
The
So-
amount of effort, like I don't know if it's paying off for that amount of effort. Like, how much are you really deducting that would pay off for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So they are, I mean, the auditors are a bit savvy. They
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
know what's going on and they understand what it
Mhm.
takes to live and
Mhm.
all of these different things. So you just have to make sure that you're pre-answering a lot of those questions. So like I said, with a guest bedroom, you taking up that whole entire closet, that
Mhm.
makes sense. That's perfectly fine. But if you have a family of 6 and a 3-bedroom house, you're probably using all of those closets for your kids and your family. So, they are taking that into account because they've gone through and they've walked through hundreds of houses at this
Mhm.
point in time. So, um, they are taking that into account. And even though some of the audit will be kind of a little bit of education and training on like what your specific job is
Mhm.
and where you're going, you do need to be aware that you have to be able to support what you're saying
Yeah.
in really simple ways. Because you want to think like if some outside person is coming in and they, if you're going into your garage and you see like racks of where you're storing all of your stuff, or, you have like people understand if you are selling inventory, you're going to have like an inventory rack where
Yeah.
you keep product, where you're doing all of these things, maybe a table out there where you're like actually packaging all of the orders. So, like if that's kind of a common thing, then are we seeing that setup already there? Or
Mhm.
is it not really there? And you're like, oh, I just sit on the floor Indian style and do it. I mean.
Yeah.
So just really making sure that everything that you're doing tells a cohesive story that's
Mhm.
very easy to follow because they will come in and check.
That is good to know.
I know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to say that you shouldn't be doing this.
Mhm.
This is a legitimate business expense. It is something that is required for your business in a lot of cases because you have to do your work somewhere.
Mhm.
So I don't think that it's something that anybody should pass up because they're not necessarily confident in like the way to calculate things.
Mhm.
I always say don't leave money on the table. And even the IRS tells you that. Like one of your in the taxpayer bill of rights, your right is to only pay the correct amount of tax. So they're not out here to tax you more
Mhm.
than what you're responsible for. So they're perfectly fine with you working from home and that being your main place of business, but they are going to make sure that you're only doing the correct amount of tax and not any more. So,
Yeah.
um, that's where sometimes this home office can
You
seem
get
a
a
little
little
bit
thing.
scary.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yep, nope, it's just making sure you're only counting places that you only work from. It's your primary place of business. You are doing the square footage test, and then you are recording all of those actual expenses. So your rent, your insurance, utilities,
Mhm.
repairs, the property taxes, the interest on your mortgage, all of that fun stuff. We want to make sure that we're taking that into account. And then that way we can help you get to that true and correct amount of tax that is actually owed.
That's fantastic. A little complicated, but also not complicated. The testing, it seems like it's pretty cut and dry of like if this will count. It's then if it does count, doing the calculations. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
No.
mm-hmm,
No, that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's why we're here. Yeah.
That is true. We do this.
So if you have any more questions about a home office, whether you qualify, what kinds of things you should be looking out for, feel free to put a comment below or reach out to us, and we are happy to chat through your particular situation.
Bye, guys.
That's a wrap on Let's Get Fiscal. Ready to stop guessing and start saving? Click the link in the show notes, grab your consult, and let's make your business work for you, not the other way around. You've got this.